Well, this is the first show we're filming a chick flick.
We are. This is Mark's idea. He really wanted to do stuff about home births, so I'm like, oh, I guess we can do home births. You're so selfish.
Personal journey for you though, isn't it?
It was. Yeah. I just gave birth at my home in January.
And I get the feeling that we're going to hear a little bit about how the media can still be negative towards this. That's what we're trying to combat, right?
Well, it's just, I guess it turns out that anything to do with birthing or being a parent is super controversial, and people like to give their opinions about everything to do with not annoying at all. I love when parents come up to me and give me all of their advice.
Right.
Or they tell me that my baby's going to die 2 days before I give birth.
No, thank you.
Because I'm having a home birth. So that's why we're here today, is to talk to Anne-Marie, who is a midwife, and she's behind us eating granola, I think, and hugging a tree. Is having a home birth safe, and what precautions should you take, and how much do midwives know about home birth?
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, from the comments online.
Do they learn on YouTube how to be midwives, or?
Well, they have that nice little basket that they bring to people's houses.
Oh, the umbrellas, they arrive under the umbrella.
They fly through the sky, and then they give you a teaspoon of sugar, and your baby just comes out. It's
simple.
Magic, I think.
Yeah.
We're with Anne-Marie Cayer, and Anne-Marie actually attended my home birth. She almost didn't attend my birth because it turned out that my baby really wanted out.
The best kinds of births.
He's like, get me out of here. So she actually heard me giving birth in my outside, right?
Yeah. I pulled up and knew that a baby was coming very quickly.
Yeah, I had the door open. I had to write letters to my neighbors to apologize.
I bet.
People, when they say midwife, they think of, you know, like Mary Poppins kind of with your just little bag. Oh, here's a spoonful of sugar, you'll be fine, you know?
Totally.
But that's, you guys have equipment in case.
I think one of the biggest misconceptions, which I also find hilarious, is that when you're choosing to have a midwife and you're choosing to have a home birth, what that means is you're going to be in a log cabin in the middle of nowhere, we'll be boiling water, and some old lady will be burning some kind of herb, right? The reality is that midwives in BC are medically trained. I did a Bachelor of Midwifery in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of British Columbia. I did a 4-year degree.
That's cute.
I don't burn things at birth. To a home birth, the equipment we carry is everything that you would have at a level 1 hospital in BC. What that means is that we don't have an operating room, right? We can't do a cesarean section at home. Mm-hmm. We don't have an intensive care unit, but we have everything that a small hospital that would support birth has in your home. So that's a big surprise, I think, that people think we're going to show up, you know, and that we have nothing if something goes wrong. Right. We actually carry a lot of medication. We carry suction, we carry oxygen, we carry IVs and catheters and everything that you would have in a basic hospital that would support delivery until they could transport you to an intensive, higher level facility.
Well, on that note, there's another misconception too, is that if something does go wrong in the hospital, that there's just a room just appears and that you're just put in right there, right? Sometimes people are waiting in the hospital for an hour to get in a room, right? And in that time, you could have called ahead from the home, right?
Yeah, in this community, certainly, we have obstetricians and pediatricians who are on call 24/7, specialists to deal with complications in labor and delivery or complications with newborns. They're on call 24/7. They can be phoned in to come attend whatever's going on, and the idea is that they can attend within about 30 minutes tops. And so unless we're delivering more than 30 minutes away by ambulance, we can access the same level of emergency care generally that you would have in the hospital. There's always exceptions to the rule. An operating room might not be available because there's just been a car accident and emergency surgery is being done. We might not be able to do an emergency C-section when we want to. So things can take a lot longer whether you're in hospital or not if you need emergency care, and vice versa. Every once in a while we need emergency care and the obstetrician happens to be right there with nothing to do and we can get a C-section within 5 minutes. So the question isn't so much about whether we're in home or hospital, it's around what's going on with our resources.
Right.
But certainly there isn't a team ready to do an emergency C-section in 2 minutes, whether you're in home or hospital. They're available eventually.
Right. I didn't realize how controversial home births are until I said on Facebook that I was having a home birth. Do you guys have a lot of people that are fighting what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that at a bureaucratic level it's being fought. Home birth has been integrated into the provincial healthcare system, and it's fully funded by our government. It's supported by the research. It's supported by people that make decisions around what will be funded within the healthcare system. So it's certainly not being fought at that level, and the provincial healthcare minister came out with a statement last year saying that for low-risk, healthy women, it's advisable to consider home births. They're looking at research and they're looking at statistics that we've collected in the province, and they're saying that our outcomes are excellent and the costs associated with it are beneficial to the system, and so it's definitely being promoted from the top down. Where we see a lot of resistance is coming from the bottom up, coming from medical colleagues, or just fear that's mostly related to miseducation or lack of understanding around the safety primarily of home birth, right? So where you tend to see people resisting it are people that work within the field that can't wrap their heads around how that could be a safe option, or from the public, people thinking that there's no possible way it could be safe for mums and babies to deliver outside of a setting where there's medical care. It's not intuitive to a lot of us.
If a person decides to have a home birth, my suggestion right now would be just not tell anybody, but
people do that.
Because it's like, unless people are educated, it's not even worth mentioning, because there is so many misconceptions, and people will say things like, oh, just because you want to have it in the comfort of your home, you're going to risk your baby's life, and things like that. And it's frustrating.
Yeah, we know that we're not subjecting babies to higher risk being born at home than in hospital. And if the risk were higher to the baby, I don't think our provincial government would be funding us to do home births. If there was a higher chance that a baby was going to die at home, statistically, we wouldn't be doing it at home. And when we look internationally to countries that have the lowest rates of neonatal mortality, they also tend to have the highest home birth rates. In those countries, Holland is kind of a leader in maternity care. We know that healthy low-risk women generally plan a home birth no matter what, and if an indication comes up for higher care, they then move into hospital. But the standard is that you always plan a home birth until there's a reason not to.
From your standpoint, it's not a medical situation, it's a natural situation.
So there's certainly two schools of thought. Some people will say it's a medical situation until proven otherwise. Until it goes normally and your baby comes flying out fast and furious, it could be a medical emergency waiting to happen, and so it should be treated as a medical emergency until it's proven that everything's okay. The other school of thought is women have done this for a long time all across the world, quite fine without intervention most of the time. It's a normal, natural thing that we shouldn't be interfering with unless something comes up that tells us we should. Some people, the idea of being in hospital surrounded by beeping machines and people in uniforms is their worst nightmare. That would make every sphincter in their body stay shut, would not lead to relaxation, would not lead to opening, would be really detrimental to their birthing process. There's other people where the thought of being at home away from those things is petrifying.
Right.
What if something happens? What if something goes wrong? Right? So the reality is that we need choice for women that are giving birth. There are women who are going to feel a lot safer and have a much smoother birthing process in the hospital, and there's women who are going to be a lot safer at home. And when I speak about safety, I'm talking about medical safety, emotional safety, physical safety, right? And depending on experiences you've had within the medical system, maybe abuse histories or different physical things that have happened to you in your life, where you feel completely safe might not be where I feel completely safe.
Well, with Mark's situation, his kid was 12 pounds? 12 pounds. and needed forceps. So if you had a situation with somebody that had a humongous baby, I thought mine was humongous at 9 pounds. Like when I held it, I was like, what the? This isn't a baby. This is a monster. That's another thing people say. Babies are not cute when they come out. I don't care what moms say. I looked at him and I thought he looked like a little bodybuilder. Didn't he?
Kind of.
He looked like a little muscle man. Yeah. But Mark's is 12 pounds. So if you were attending, Mark and his wife were at home and they, had the 12-pound baby ready to go, how, as a midwife, would you handle that situation?
So basically, if the size of a baby doesn't tell us if it's going to come out or not. So we watch a labor. If everything's going smoothly, we keep going at home and we receive the baby. If at any point labor stalls out, things aren't working properly, then we offer to transfer into hospital, or we suggest that it might need to come up. The reality is that if a baby comes out at home, we carry everything to resuscitate a baby that you have in hospital. The care isn't any different. The only thing that's different is we don't have an intensive care unit.
Okay, so I swear, if I was going into this now, and because I purposely went to just read the worst things I could possibly find about home births online, which I'm very happy I didn't do before I gave birth. There's one Hurt by Home Birth. It's a website.
How many do you think you'd find if we looked up hurt in the hospital? It's interesting that we don't ask about, like we hear often, I just wouldn't want to birth at home. I hear it from dads a lot. I'd feel so bad if something happened to my wife or my baby. And what always comes into mind is, why don't we question what could happen to your wife or your baby in hospital, where you have a higher chance of being subjected to people you don't know, who might not know your value system and might not know your background, and might do things that feel really violating or scary or not well communicated. The chances are a lot higher, I would argue, in hospital than in your own home with your midwife, who you already know. Someone
that you're comfortable with. In the hospital, I mean, there's so many things that happen in the hospital. I mean, that couple that just had the forceps incident, it's like, because it's in a hospital, it almost seems like people are okay with that more than if that had happened at a home birth. They took the risk.
That's just it. If you have a close call at home or a poor outcome at home, we'll hear ripples of that echoing in a community for a decade. The reality is that's happening in hospital all the time, but at least they were in the hospital, so that's the safest thing, and so they did the best they could.
Yeah, they did their due diligence.
Yeah, and people aren't reversing the question of what risk are you subjecting yourself to when you go into hospital, and we know statistically that rates of intervention are higher. We know that all kinds of things happen more often in the hospital than they would have to the same low-risk women had they stayed out of the hospital. We know that.
Well, this one stat that was on this Hurt by Home Births, it said 450% higher death rate than hospital birth.
Yeah, so I don't know the website and I don't know where the data comes from that they're quoting, but we have really good quality data in British Columbia with our midwifery care system that tells us different statistics. When you look at home birth stats, where it gets really tricky is that if you look to other countries, there can be really different systems. There are states in the US where midwives it's illegal to be a midwife and it's illegal to have a home birth. So you have people attending home deliveries who maybe have no education, who maybe have no equipment.
And they get counted in the stats.
They get counted in the stats. The other thing that happens is any baby born out of hospital is classified as a home birth, whether it was planned or not, whether it was born on the side of the road unattended in the middle of winter by accident, or whether it was a planned home birth. So often when you start looking into home birth statistics, it gets really complicated because you do have poorer outcomes if you're planning to birth at home and you don't have an emergency transport plan and you don't have any medical equipment and you don't have a trained health professional. If those things aren't in place, you can pretty much guarantee outcomes aren't going to be as good.
My sister had a midwife in the hospital in Penticton, and I was wondering, because there's so much different viewpoints with doctors and midwives, is there any friction there, and how do you guys end up working together? Like, what's that whole synergy like?
We're all individuals, and so certain doctors maybe practice more like a midwife would practice, and certain midwives practice more like how a doctor would practice. So I think there's a continuum of how we view birth and how we expect these experiences to go, and what we believe informed choice and women's choice, how that factors into providing medical care. Certainly just within my profession, there are midwives that are more renegade and they're really diehard home birthers, au naturel kind of people. And there are midwives who practice exactly like a family physician might practice. Same thing within doctors. Some are more medical, some are more women's choice advocates. Working within the hospital setting, I would say it comes down to working together as individuals more than as two different silos of professions. There are family physicians that I think understand what we do and value it on some level. And we have family physicians that have their babies with us, and we've had physicians that have had home births with us.
Really?
Yeah. But we also have the opposite, right? We have physicians who don't get what we do, who don't value what we do, maybe don't understand what we do.
Do you ever have words with doctors? Let's get the dirt here.
Yeah, I would say less often now than I used to. Certainly when I started working in this community almost 10 years ago, I felt a lot more friction from physicians, from nurses. I would say I felt more of that, and I feel less and less of that now. And I don't know if that's me.
Well, you're well versed now. It's like you can just go, because I mean, you actually help make me comfortable, because any question that I had and I brought up to you at the appointments, you're like, boom, boom, like you just had all the answers to the serious questions that people are having about midwives and home births. After I gave birth, I actually was thinking, because I had music and candles and everything was like really peaceful. And I thought after, and it was painful, like it was the worst thing I've ever experienced, let's be honest here. But after experiencing it at home, I was thinking, okay, I had like really bad back pain. I couldn't even sit down. Like I had to stand during all my labor. Like, how do people get in the car? Like they have to call an ambulance and then they have to go like to the hospital. That seems terrifying to me.
Yeah, often when people don't have a midwife coming and assessing them at home and letting them know, like before you were in active labor, I came over and I
don't recall. Remember when I was like, it's you? I was like so happy to see her.
I came over once before you were in active labor and I checked you and did your vital signs, and we knew it was too early for me to stay with you. So you can imagine that if you didn't have a midwife, you would have gone into hospital and you would have had an assessment and they would have told you when to come back and you would have gone back home. So it's a little...
During all that pain?
Yeah.
You have to go to the hospital and then come home?
Yeah. They'll offer you sometimes some medication to decrease the pain and send you back home. And then things would have picked up and you probably would have not stayed at home as long as you did before you called me, because the pain would have been so high and you would have said, I can't get in the car any later than this. So you probably would have gone in a bit early.
I don't think I could have gone in the car when I saw you the first time. Like that was
tricky.
Horrible.
So for a lot of people, I mean, depending on how their labors go, some people, their labors are really mellow and it takes forever and it's like not a big deal for that journey. When you're having a fast labor like you did and things are really strong and intense going really quickly, people can't wrap their head around what that would be like to get in the car, register at the hospital, get up the elevator, find a room. And every once in a while you have babies born in the parking lot or the elevator or the hallway on the way up, because it's hard to move very quickly when you're in that kind of, feeling that kind of intensity.
Remember when I told you that I took a Tylenol?
Because that's really going to help when you're having a baby.
Actually, in hindsight's always 2020, I probably could have used a few Tylenol.
Like a bottle?
Yeah. With the home birth, I felt so in my power. Like
you're on your turf.
Yeah, I was like, my water's gonna break right here, and I'm gonna give birth right here. I didn't feel, it wasn't invasive to me. It felt like, I got to, first of all, be a part of my own birth because I was present. I wasn't hopped up on all these drugs, and I felt like I was able to make my own decisions. So on the opposite side, one person said that home births are like driving a car without a seatbelt. 99.9% of the time, it's no big deal.
I like that. I would say childbirth in general is like that. 99.9% of the time it works just fine, and there's a small portion of times where it doesn't go well. I don't think that birthing out of a hospital is without a seatbelt. Arguably, maybe birthing at home by yourself without a care provider, without an emergency transport plan, without any equipment, maybe that would be like driving without a seatbelt. But I certainly feel, as I monitor labor as identical, home or hospital, I use the exact same equipment, I use the same paperwork, I follow the same national guidelines. That feels like a lot of seatbelts.
How about this one? Midwives are stupid. So for any first-time moms who are trying to decide between midwives and home births or going the hospital route, what kind of advice would you have for them?
Good question. I think finding a care provider that listens to you and you feel like you have a connection with is the most important thing. It might be a midwife, it might be a doctor. As long as you trust that they're hearing you and they're going to respect your wishes to the best that they can, I think that's important. And I think finding out who will actually be with you for the delivery is important, because midwives and physicians, we work in groups, and you always want to get a sense of who potentially could be at my birth, and do I feel safe with whoever that person may be. Again, safety being physical safety, emotional safety. As far as choosing whether you want to give birth at home or hospital, I always encourage people to be flexible. Babies will be born where they need to be born. Sometimes they're supposed to be born in the hospital, that's the plan, and guess what? They're coming faster than that, and they're accidentally going to be born at home or on the highway in the back of a car, at Walmart. We all hear those stories. Sometimes babies are supposed to be born in the hospital and they don't come out there, and vice versa. There's people who desperately want their babies to be born at home, and the labor process doesn't go in a way that supports that as the best choice, and moving into hospital is wise. If I had my dream world, everybody would start off at home unless there was a risk factor or a sign that there's a higher chance of something going sideways. I would have everybody start at home, see how things go, and at some point either things are going to go a little bit sideways and we'll move into hospital, or they're going to go straight forward and you're in the place that you need to be to have a normal birth.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we haven't covered?
No, I think that was damn thorough.